Hello everyone, welcome to the first chapter of Linux shell scripting. We'll start this chapter with the brief introduction of shell types, and what is shell scripting. And in the second part of the video, we will learn to run very basic scripts and also look into the arguments and variables. And as we progress in the next chapters, in future videos, we'll address more advanced level scripting. So let's start today's chapter with the brief introduction of shell. So Linux has a kernel at the core of operating system, which interacts with the hardware directly and takes user inputs through command or applications. And if you use desktop environment and open any application, it will be interacting with the system through kernel. But if your system does not have a desktop environment, or you prefer command line interaction with the system, you would do so using a shell. So shell is a command line user interface for us to access the system, and the terminal is an application or program that lets us interact with the shell. Let's say you do not have any desktop environment installed in your system, and when you log in, as soon as you log in, what you get is a terminal. And if you have a desktop environment installed, you can open up the terminal using Control-Alt-T, which is a shortcut to open terminal and supported by the most of the Linux distributions. Or you can also search for the terminal, or you can go through your graphical menus, utilities, and if you scroll down, you'll see the terminal here. So there are different types of shell in Linux system, and most common are sh shell, bash shell, ksh shell, csh shell, and tcsh shell. There are other shell types as well, but these are the most common used shells in Linux system. And you can run echo space $uppercase shell command to see what shell you're using. And I'm using bash shell, which is the most common and the default shell in most of the Linux distribution. And we'll cover the shell scripting videos in reference with the bash shell. So what is shell script? So shell script is basically a lines of commands which execute sequentially to perform certain tasks defined by those commands. And it is mainly used to automate jobs by running those commands in a sequence. So for example, you've probably done, if you want to update your system, you have probably done sudo apt get update to check your repository and update your repository. So what it does is, if first command gets successful, then it will run the second command. And you can also do or condition. So this is and. You can also use a or condition. Let's say let's test if I have a directory named ABC, and if it's not, then create one. So in this case, it's a or condition. So if first condition fails, then the second runs, and it created a directory called ABC. Similarly, you could do ls xyz, or if it does not exist, create one. So in this case, the first command didn't run successfully, but it executed a second command and created a XYZ directory. And if you want to run multiple commands without the condition, you could simply use semicolon ls colon pwd. So simply printed or list files and directories. And in the second line, it printed present working directory, print working directory. So all these conditional commands are simple form of shell script. It's just that we didn't formally organize them as a script in one file, but rather executed sequentially using a command line. So now let's look at how we can create those scripts. So to create a script, you will need a text editor, and you can use command line based text editors such as VI or Nano, or if you use desktop environment, you can use gedit, graphical edit, and write your shell script there. I'll be using VI editor most of the time, and there are a few configurations we can change so that the VI works best for the scripting. By default, when you do tab, it creates a tab of 8 space character. And if you write something and hit enter, it starts in the beginning of the line. So to avoid that, you can create Vim runtime configuration file and change the settings. So if you do not have that file, you can create one. So since I do not have one, let's create this file. So .vimrc. So it's a hidden file, Vim runtime configuration file. And here you can set auto indent, tab stop, and line number, etc. I created a video about VI in the past where I explained many features about VI and how to configure VI. I'll put the link of that video on the top right corner if you want to check out later. So set auto indent, set tab stop 4. And if you want to print line number, then just set number and save it. So now if we open VI, it will have a line number displayed. And if we hit tab, it's a 4-space tab. This is a test line. And when you hit enter, it automatically indents to the new line. New line, I'm not saving it. So, and if you are using gedit to write script, you can actually open the program go to preference, and go to editor tab and set those settings. So now we have a editor ready. So let's go ahead and create our first shell script. So vi hello.assets. Assets simply means it's a shell script. So every shell script starts with the comment line, and this is called cbang or hashbang. So even though it starts with the comment line hash sign, the system still reads it and instruct the interpreter to execute the script. So this tells the system that this is a bash script, and echo hello world. And you can do optional x0. It will tell the system that a script is ending with the status code of 0. And any status code other than 0 means there's an error in the script. And save it. Now you can run the script, but before that, we have to change the permission of the script to be executable, and we can do so using ch command. So if we do hello.sh, this is read write, and read permission. So there is no executable permission on the file. We can do chmod, give user executable permission. Now if we do hello.sh, it has execute permission to the user, and the file is changed. Now we can simply type bash hello.sh, or we could also do /script name. So echo command simply printed a line that was written within the double quote. And if you do echo here, it's the same thing. So echo simply prints the output on the standard output device, which is the monitor by default. So this is just a simple static line of code. Now let's try to run with the arguments. So vi args.sh, so create a new file. Echo hello $1. So $sign actually represent the first arguments in the command line, and $0 means the name of the script itself, which we'll look into shortly. So now if I run, let's change the permission first. Now if I run, it just printed hello, but it ignored the $1 sign because we didn't supply any argument. So we can now supply the argument in the command line, umes, for example. So it took that input as an argument and printed the output. We could also do hello user, which is the currently logged in user, and hello umes. If you simply do echo user, it also prints the logged in user. So you see this script is basically all the commands that we run in the command line, but it's just organized inside a file. Now let's do something on the same script and add a couple lines here. So echo hello 0, 1, 2, and let's also do echo hello $sign bracket 10, and let's also do echo hello $sign asterisk. So let's look at this example. So simply printed, let's also see the code. So this first line simply printed the first argument with hello. The second line, hello $0 means the name of the script itself. So it printed that along with the first argument, which is umes. Since there is no second argument, it didn't print anything. The third line, actually, it prints the 10th argument. So any argument that is in double-digit number, you have to put inside the bracket. And the fourth line, $asterisk, it just prints all the arguments. So if we run the same command again, but let's do an ABC, XYZ, DEF, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we ran with multiple arguments. Now it printed first argument, then 0, 1, and 2 argument, and 10th argument is number 5, and the last one printed everything. So this is how you can supply multiple arguments and print them using echo command. One thing you have to be careful on this one is these are double quotes, so do not use a single quote. Single quote will protect all the special characters, and double quote also protects all the character except the $sign, and that is why shell interprets the symbol dollar and gives the value rather than the symbol itself. If we ever need to print a $sign itself as a part of output, we'll be using a backslash to skip the character $sign instead of using a single quote. So let's look at one example. Vi assets. Echo a burger cost $5. Echo single quote a burger cost $5. And echo double quote a burger cost backslash $5. Here's mode. So in this case, the first line of output is simply burger cost, because with the $5, it's expecting a fifth argument. Since we didn't supply, it's a blank, didn't print anything. Second line just printed as it is because single quote blocked the meaning of the $sign. So simply printed whatever we wrote inside the single quote. And the third line, a burger cost $5. So actually backslash blocked the meaning of $sign and printed $5. So if you look at second and third line, you feel like they are producing the same results. So why can't we use single quote instead of double quote to block the $sign? So to clarify that, let's create another script, and I'll demonstrate why using single quote is not a good idea. So let's create one example where you want a line where you want to call the variable, but also want to escape the $sign. So let's do escape. And do echo. Let's do the same. User gave me $5, for example. Echo. Now let's do single quote. User gave me $5, and echo user gave me backslash. Let's save it. Change the permission. Now if we run the script and give argument 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. So this line just took the fifth argument, which is 25, and printed. And user is Umesh. So Umesh gave me 25. The second line blocked by single quote. So everything is blocked, just printed as it is. And on the third line, which is interesting one, so double quote actually blocks all the special character except the $sign. So $user gave me currently logged in user, Umesh, gave me, and now backslash escaped the $sign and just printed $5. So this proves that using a single quote is not a good idea if you want to mix up the output. So you always use a double quote, and if you want to skip certain character, just use the backslash. So these are static files and arguments. So now let's look into the variables and how to declare variables. So there are two types of variables. One is environment variable and another is a user-defined variable. So let's talk about the environment variable. So this one, echo user, echo home, which is the home directory for a user, echo path. So these all are variable defined by shell, which you can use as you need. And these are known as environment variables. And you can use print env to print all environment variables in your system. And you could also do print env and home, same as echo home command. So one thing you might notice here is that all environment variables are in uppercase, and that is exactly how you should write it when you want to call those variables in your script. So there's not much in environment variables. These are just variables you can use in your script. So now let's talk about user-defined variables. So defining a variable is an important part of any programming language, and we can do so in shell scripting as well. And like in many other programming languages, a variable is given a value using an equal sign. And in shell script, you can access those variables value using a $sign. One important thing to note here is when you assign a value to the variable, there should not be any space between variable name, equal sign, and the value of the variable. So if you want to print that value, echo the variable name. So assign a value to the variable equal sign and get the value of variable using $sign. If you try to give space when you declare a variable value, the system will treat ABC as a command and it gives you error message. So ABC command not found. So that is why it is important not to give space between variables, equal sign, and the variable value. So let's try one simple script to make a user variable. Vi var create one let's do country, and you can use double quote to give space between value of the variable. States 50, so there's no space on the value, so you can just simply define like that. And let's do population 330 millions. I don't know exactly, but let's give it a number. And do echo, let's do country is a country of population, people, and has this many states. Save. So let's read the script. So echo country just took the value from here, is a country of 330 million people and has 50 states. So this is how we can define a variable and call variable using $sign. And by default, any variable that you define in one script has its scope within the script itself, meaning you can't call that variable in another script unless you export the variable. So let's do XYZ equals 345 echo XYZ. Now we display 345. Let's open another bash within this bash and do echo XYZ. So it couldn't recognize that variable in different shell and it couldn't print the output. But if we do export XYZ equal to 098 echo XYZ 098, now do the different bash and echo XYZ should print that value as well. So this is how we can export the variable and have its scope available in different script. So in those examples, one variable is holding only one value. But if you want a variable that can have multiple values, you have to define it as an array variable. And to declare array, you have to define values within a bracket separated by space. So let's try vi array.sh. .sh is not mandatory, but it just tells us, and it's easy to separate that it's a script file. So let's do array, and within the bracket, let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. And to access those array, you have to use $sign in bracket array, and 0 prints the first element of array. Let's do another one, $sign curly brace bracket 1. And let's do echo $sign curly brace and everything. So you probably already guessed that asterisk will print everything. CS mode. And now let's run array. So printed first element of array, printed second element of array, and printed all the elements of an array. 0 is 1, 1 is 2, and asterisk means everything. And to remove a specific element from the array, you can use the onset command. So if we go same file and do, let's say, onset array 1, and now let's print $1. We just delete that element from the array, and let's print everything here. Array, everything, and let's onset all the elements of the array using onset array command echo. Now let's print everything one more time. So just print it as it is before, no change up to here. On the fourth line, we onset array 1, which is this one, and try to print. So we deleted that element and try to print the same one. So it's blank, nothing is there. And when we printed everything, so except 2, it printed everything because that element we removed it. And in this line, we removed all the elements of array and tried to print everything. And it didn't print anything because all the elements are removed. So that's how you can define an array or remove an element of the array. So if you notice that when we run any command, we do dot slash and the name of the script, or bash name of the script. But if you just type name of the script, it does not work. And if you want to make it work, let's create one directory and move all the scripts there. Move everything.sh inside the scripts. So cd scripts, all our scripts are here. Actually, let's move out this one and update outside. Now, if I add this path /home/umesh/scripts into the path variable, I could simply run those scripts as if I'm running a command. So let's do that. Export path equals current path and colon. Now we are adding my home directory /scripts into the path variable. And now, no matter where I am, I can simply run scope like a command. I can hit tab, complete the command. I could do array. So now I'm running as if it's a command. But this is non-persistent. So once you exit out of it and open a new terminal, it'll be gone. But if you want that to be persistent, you have to add that line into .bashrc file. Just go to the end of the file and add that line here. Export path equals path home directory scripts. Now open the terminal and do scope.sh or array.sh. Now it will work even if you exited the terminal and open a new one. And you can also set in Ubuntu, you can change that in here also. So you can add your home directory and script folder here as well. So with this little tip, I'm going to end today's video. So today we discussed about the basic shell script. What is the shell script? What are the different types of shell, and how to run script with an argument, how to define variable, and how to define array and remove or add element in the array. So I hope this video was helpful to you, especially if you're learning shell script or this is your first time doing shell scripting. In future videos, we'll explore more about shell scripting, how to create a loop, how to create a condition, how to execute the condition, and stuff like that. So I hope to see you in the future video, and thanks for watching, and keep practicing Linux.